Hey y'all, welcome to the last episode of Adventures with Aggie, bouncing around, brought to you by Coco's Coffee House. Today, I'm so excited to share the story of Larry Williams, also known as Bone Collector, who you might have seen on Instagram or maybe hanging out in Rucker Park if you're a street basketball fan. But Larry is going to kind of walk us through his story and why he started basketball from the very beginning. Then he's going to walk us through all of the cool people that he's trained. He's worked with LeBron, he's worked with Kobe, he's worked with James Harden, and tell us how he does it and why he does it. So please welcome Bone. Hey, Bone, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How you doing?
I'm good. Thanks so much for coming on. I'm so excited to share your story. But just to get started, can you kind of give me some background on who you are and what you do?
Background, I would have to say the best way to explain my background story would be to say I was able to get a nickname in a famous park in New York, Rucker Park. It started in the early 2000s during the time between 2000 and 2006 or 7 when the AWA mixtape was really hitting the markets hard with streetball. Rucker Park was synonymous with and one just because it was street ball. The Rucker Park was a little different because although and one had NBA players guest appearances, the Rucker Park was NBA players and college players and overseas players and everybody there. So I wouldn't say the competition was different. I would say it was extremely aggressive. Because in some of those mixtape games, those games were pretty, competitive. But that's how I got my start. I played there for 5 years. I got MVP 5 years in a row. I played with some of the most amazing athletes. Rest in peace, Kobe Bryant, Steve Francis. I seen, when I was out there in the park, Ray for Alston, rest in peace, Ali Mo. Those guys that were Allen Iverson, those guys that were on their way to the NBA at the time, they came to the park. And because I did so well, they gave me a nickname, Bone Collector. And from there, it just blew up from there. And that was about early 2001 when I got the nickname.
You read my mind. That was the next question. What's your nickname? How'd you get it? But that's amazing. Yeah, you've played with amazing people. You've done really cool things, and people obviously they recognize it, right?
Yeah.
Like people want to play you. They're dying to come play you. But I guess, yeah, definitely. But I guess I kind of want to backtrack. So, why basketball? Like, how did this become your thing?
Basketball was more, my father took me to the courts to kind of take me away from the interferences of the outside world, which would be my peers and all the influences from television to the street corners to the business world. He wanted me to have another place to go to where I felt safe. So I used basketball to kind of find that safe place, and then became a spiritual journey from there. It became something, it's almost like the metaphor for basketball in life became synonymous. When you shoot a basketball, and I don't know if this works for everyone, but when you shoot a basketball and you let it out of your hands, you don't really know if it's going to go in. But if you've been practicing long enough, you can kind of feel when they're going to make it. You don't really know, but you can kind of guess that. And that's how life was for me with basketball. So that's why I chose to stick it with basketball, because it was giving me those life lessons at the same time.
Definitely. I'm taking a course right now actually in school called How Basketball Can Save the World. And I
Really?
feel like yes,
Whoa.
it's incredible because I think it's true. I'm still in the convincing stage, I guess, because this is a big
That's
statement,
a
right?
huge statement.
But
Wow.
yeah, it's incredible though to see how basketball affects all people in different
Right.
ways, right? Like we're talking about political impact, economic impact, like humanitarian impact, and just humans, like being human and playing basketball and how impactful it is to different people. But I think that's really cool to hear that that was kind of a haven, I guess, for you growing up. And I think that's true for a lot of other players as well. Um, but it's just really interesting. I don't know. I feel like worlds are colliding right now with my class and
Now,
now
what
hearing
we're
you
talking
speak
about, it
as
does
well.
sound similar because I was going to say basketball, I have history on it because I work for the partner with the NBA and the NBA Playmakers Association. And um, they have explained to me that the basketball was started from the Youth Christians Men Association, which we all know as the YMCA. So when you see the pictures of the peach basket, that was a YMCA photo. So it was created for some spiritual purpose to keep the kids that were in that area away from whatever was going on in that space. And Naismith, decided to, make a game of it or whatever. So I see how they can. It's a big statement, but I see how they can be similar.
Definitely, definitely. It's incredible because we're studying Naismith and we're studying this whole evolution, and I guess it's kind of working up into today and how things like media and content and all of that is related directly with basketball and sport in general. Um, it's incredible. It's such a cool thing to watch and to learn too, like in school, which is amazing. But
That's pretty cool to be studying that.
yeah, it's awesome. It's awesome. But shout out to Professor Hollander. He's teaching a basketball class. Never would have thought that would happen. But
Wow.
yeah,
Hmm.
it's so cool. Um, awesome. Well, I wanted to talk about these life lessons and things. You're talking about you were receiving the lessons and you were learning things as a kid. How did you turn that into becoming a trainer and a coach? And I guess why did that happen? How did you know that you wanted to go into training and coaching?
Um, I think that the training and coaching part started with just being my desire to learn it and master it. So when I would get little scenarios where my dad would challenge me to do a 5 dribble drill or whatever, I would come back the next day with a 10 dribble drill. I wanted to push myself to do a little bit better so much that it almost became like a mental exercise. So because I've been doing it for so long, I felt that it would be unfair to explain to a kid that his imagination does not come from a cell phone. It doesn't come from your friends. It doesn't come from anybody but you. How you see it is how it may look when you finish the product. So in order to explain that and break that down, because I have children, I thought that coaching would be an easy way to do that because you're dealing with a family situation when you deal with basketball, football, any sport where there's a coach and then there's players, because then you have the head of the household and the people that follow the orders. And so all these learning techniques, I felt that if I could give them something fun to do, like break ankles or something that they like, it would be easier to teach them how to master their own crafts because they wouldn't be doing my moves. I would just be expanding their minds and showing them things that they could do a little different according to how they saw it. So coaching was the easiest way to do that, just because they're there to learn. You don't, the first part is already defeated. They're not there to kind of challenge you, even though they do, but they really want to learn. So it was a much easier transition. And I ended up winning a CIF championship, a state championship with my high school team, being that I learned so much. So it was the experience itself was amazing. So that's what drove me to continue to do it. And now I train a lot of NBA players and college players. And I'm even working on some things with some guys in the near future that are going to be amazing, like the one of the Lakers trainers, Phil Handy. I got some things that I've been wanting to do with basketball for a long time, but I never thought it was necessary to kind of force your will upon, someone else when it comes to being creative. But I do have a couple of tricks of the trade, I should say, that kids need to know, and I'm going to give it to them. And that's what we've been moving forward with my company. And to answer your question, training only makes sense if you can get the people to buy into what you're doing. So I keep myself trained and I train at the same time.
That's that's I think very beneficial for both parties, right? Going double, I guess, hitting both of those. But that's so. I know you're doing really cool things with your company as well, but I think it's really cool to see players turn into coaches or trainers because at that point you've seen both sides of the game. So I think that
Mhm.
it's it's very different, and I feel like your coaching styles are probably very different from those who just do the coaching route and they didn't have that kind of on court experience and things. I I'm not a basketball player or a coach, so I can't really speak on too much of that. But I think that being able to see both sides of the game has to be really helpful, and that's probably why so many people come to you for that kind of proper training, I would say. But
Yeah, I agree. Thank you. I appreciate that.
yeah, definitely. Awesome. Well, let's kind of talk about these people that you're training.
Mm.
What, I guess, how do these people, how do they find you? Or how do you connect with, I know you have a bunch of different workshops with kids as well as people of all different levels, but
Uh-huh.
yeah, who do you work with?
So right now, I work with a few different people. I just left Seattle working with Nate Robinson and his kids. I'll be going to, I believe it is Vegas, to work with some of the young players there, Julian Newman and that family out there. There's a player in New York. I can't mention his name, but he's very good in dribbling. And he's works for the NBA. So when the second half of the season is released, because of COVID, we're going to do a collaboration together, teaching people to, kind of combine. And I would say the name, but it's such an amazing collaboration and I've signed some things that I think is be more important for the kids to just see it. And then Ben McLemore for the Houston Rockets is a good friend of mine that I'm going to be training soon. And the list it's a lot of different people from George Hill to even Paul George. Some of these guys that I've ran into throughout my career, I ran into them in certain occasions where if they, when the season permits, they have the opportunity to get this personal one-on-one training. It doesn't take long, a couple days, and then there's a rhythm built from there. There's an understanding of the way to dribble. There's a language. Basketball has a language that people don't know about. And because if you don't play it enough, you can't really, understand the language. It's like, anything you do in life, if you don't understand it clearly, then you have issues. Even the human language we speak right now, it's not clear to us how to use it. So that's why we have to watch our tongues, even with our everyday lives. So basketball is the same way. So I choose to open my doors to those people and they respond. Now with the kids, particularly training, they usually reach out to me on like an Instagram or a Facebook or something like that because of my social media following. They're kind of familiar with what I do. And my training is pretty much, straightforward. It's really more of a mind thing. I train the mind first and then the body follows. So the players usually love it. And I always teach them something ridiculous at the end where they feel invincible. And I think my favorite player to work with so far was James Harden, because we just did a lot of mind opening things, more not specific to, hey, I want you to do this move. It was more of a, what can you do? Like more of a, what limits can you push? Because when you combine those kind of worlds, it's a different type of ball handling exercise. So that's how I pretty much put everything together, and then my company built from that point, and we've been going since. And our live events are a lot of fun because we do 3-on-3s and basketball camps and all that in the same weekend. So you get to play against me, you get to train with me, you get to tell me what you're going through. And my company has a lot of organizations that help underprivileged kids because they need parents, they need guidance, they need all these things. And sometimes just being an influencer is not enough. It's not about what they can pay you, it's what you can give them in the long run. So because of all these things, it makes it so much easier for me to train kids because I try to give them everything they need if I can.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. I think that's so cool. Like lots of coaches, they have like their niche, right? Their group of kids that they train, but you really have expanded into all kinds of people in general, like people ages from different places and stuff, which is so cool. So cool to watch
My
on
biggest
social.
fan base is China. China, what's
Wow.
up, China?
I love that. That's so cool. I love it. Awesome. Well, let's kind of talk about, I guess, the transition from street ball to either college or pro. I guess what kinds of differences do you see in the players that come up through street ball or come up through college and then transition into NBA?
There hasn't been many cases, so I don't want to say that this in a way where I sound like an expert. So I'm going to just speak on things I know. And street ball players that have played in the NBA, I would have to say that I've witnessed with my own two eyes: Nate Robertson, Jamal Crawford, Jamal Tinsley, Ray Austin, God Sham God, Kevin Durant. I consider Kevin Durant street ball because he played in all the tournaments, and Barry Farms and all these things. I'm missing a lot of people like Lance Stevenson, and I'm missing a lot of people, but um, I would say that the best way to describe it from what I've learned from them, because I'm still learning, and I haven't figured it out completely, but I think in the NBA, especially in this day and age, you have to be able to adjust to the players and then learn the sets and the pick and rolls and all these things that you wouldn't normally think are important. So what I mean is, let's say you got all these handles, skills, jump shots, dunks, whatever. You still have to put that aside so you can be more productive for the team. So your situation is not just oh, I'm going to come in and my talent is going to outweigh this. You have to pay attention to detail. And I think that if I had to explain in any way that the fundamentals of the game are missing in a way, not that the physical parts of the fundamentals, I say the mental fundamentals are missing right now. So everybody can't be the all-star, the fundamentals are everybody should be doing the same work, and those people who are a little better should might shine a little bit, but the work should be done all the time. And I think those people who do that work are the people who make it to that level, and they're consistent, and they get obviously paid money in a lot of different situations to do that. So to be a pro, like I said, I'm still learning this, and I've played with every situation that I could possibly think of. And I think you still have to learn that work ethic and what it takes to be a professional without, compromising yourself or putting yourself in a situation where you're shooting yourself in the foot, so to speak. Excuse my language, but kind of you know, don't put yourself in a situation where you have to over exert your energy for something that's not even yours. Your job description, you can't see it because you're so clouded with yourself. So make sure your resume is up to par as well. So with that being, that's just the blueprint that I've seen watching the players I've seen play. Obviously, Allen Iverson, Kobe, I've seen these guys play. Rest in peace, play in the street ball tournaments. Jason Williams and those guys, I'm pretty sure, can play in street ball tournaments. And I'm pretty sure they know how to do both. And obviously, they did.
For sure. I think, yeah, the mental piece of it is something that stuck out to me when you were speaking about that, because I think within this last year, people have realized the importance of mental health, mental well-being, and things like that. So just hearing you talk about how big of a piece that is in street ball and in basketball in general, I think people forget about that a lot, because people throw around mental health, mental well-being, and stuff like that, but they don't actually know what it means or practice it as much as I think people say they should, or something like that. I don't know. I think that's a huge piece in sport in general, just with the discipline. And I mean, we've seen it in the last year. It's
Right.
really common, I guess.
Yes, I agree.
Definitely.
That's very common nowadays. Yes.
For sure. For sure. Awesome. I'm going to jump in with one more question, and then Anthony will have a couple, and then we'll wrap up from there.
All right.
But I guess I wanted to ask you about content creation and basketball. This has become increasingly popular, I guess, over the last, 10 years, I would say. It grew a lot.
Mhm.
But how has this affected you, your business, and kind of your presence on social media and other platforms?
Content creation flipped the table upside down when it came down to what I particularly do. Um, when I started out playing basketball, the best way to explain that is when I started out when I was 5, and then all the things I could think of in my head, and I really had some amazing thoughts. I never would think that I would be known for making people fall. Like, I never thought that my name would be Bone Collector, or people would call me that, right? So social media has given me the opportunity to express myself without having to be arrogant. That's not my original nickname. My original nickname is Speedy. It's on one side of my neck, I believe. And then I have Bone Collector here, but it's because social media is that platform where you can share it so easily. It became almost second nature to what I actually do. So when I used to go to a park, to give you an example, and I do a crazy move or somebody fall, you would hear about it because the people would be talking about it in their groups, in the barbershops, and standing in line to buy burgers. They just talking, hey, did you see this, that, and the third? Now you can hit share, and somebody in China can actually see it, or Japan, or in Wyoming, or wherever you are, they can see it instantly. So I think it made the shareable stuff, made it so completely marketable for the generation moving forward, that the collaborations and the YouTube space and all that stuff became like TV almost. And if you can spend hours on your phone, sometimes you get caught in it, on just you scroll through it, and you're on there for 30 minutes because there's so many different things going on. And if you are talented at something, or you have a gift and you have a good social media following, you can pursue different careers. And there's a lot of people making decent incomes and taking care of their families from just doing content. And because I didn't know the space, I was just blessed to be good at what I was doing, obviously. And I put in a lot of different, I would say, you put in a lot of different cause and effect situations. So you try something, and if it works, it works. If it doesn't, you scrap it and move on. So because you can do that so often in social media, because it's just the click of a button, I think your content and what you put out now has a value to it. And the person you are is what the kids and the people buy into. And the hard part about that sometimes is you don't want to be on camera explaining yourself when that's not who you are. So I think that is also something that's not discussed as we speak on mental health. Not everyone deserves a platform to speak. And I think that's the balance in between being influential or being an influencer, or out, just, trying to work to build a platform. There's two different ways that it'll affect your life and others. With those two elements, though, even with all that being said, there's always an upside to it. So it really changed, I would say, in the early, maybe 2012 or 2011, so to speak. Around that time, it got out of control. And now it's, you can literally go viral if you do something crazy enough.
Definitely. The value piece of what you were speaking about, the value in just having that platform, but also there's so much other value behind it too, the monetary value. Like that's also become so huge, which has been crazy to watch, I guess. But it's true. Everybody can have their platform if they want it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's a game changer, especially in sports. But
Yes.
yeah, it's been so cool to watch. But yeah, I think I'll turn it over to Anthony. If you want to jump in with a couple questions.
Hey, what's going on, Bone?
How you doing, Anthony?
All right. First and foremost, I just want to say that I'm a huge fan. Definitely growing up in New York, I know the history of Rucker, and so
I appreciate that, bro.
yeah, definitely, man. I appreciate it. I'm a huge fan of the game. I love, I would like to call myself, a black basketball purist. I just love
Oh,
the
wow.
skill. I love it's so for me. I would say that basketball is my love. I'm kind of obsessed with it. I'm currently wearing some Mellow merch right now. Like
Yes.
I think I love the skill that comes with it. So I'm a huge fan of the game. So first off, I just want to thank you for what you contributed to the game in itself.
Thank you, man. I
So,
appreciate that. I do definitely understand what you mean, because I want to reverse that and say, because of you, I'm comfortably me, if you get my drift.
definitely.
I'm working for something. There's an audience, and I think that me and you having this conversation is that audience. What do you get from the game? I guess we put in the same amount of hours, whether you dribble the ball or not. We looked at it the same amount of time. So we are together explaining something that a lot of people won't understand. So that respect is definitely reciprocated.
Right.
And I appreciate you putting that work in to make me good at what I do, because you wouldn't like me as a player if I didn't.
No, definitely, I understand. When you made the point earlier when you were talking about you know the ball coming from your hand and you knowing and having that feeling. I mean, for me, sometimes basketball is a stress reliever. If I got a lot going on in my life, I just go out to the backyard and start letting the ball go. And you know when as soon as it leaves your finger,
Yeah,
you know when it's going.
everything goes away.
Yeah, everything it clears up. It clears you know your mind.
Yeah.
So definitely my first question kind of ties into that, and I've noticed that the game is starting to become very analytical.
Mm,
So what is your, how do you feel about analytics, and how do you feel about the eye test? Everyone calling it the eye test, where if somebody can hoop. There's plenty of guys out there,
mm,
the Michael Beasleys of the world, where there's so much skill and talent there. And
mm.
in terms of people that like to talk about analytics, they might not necessarily feel that these people are fit, or these guys
Right.
are fit, for the NBA game today. So well, I just want to know what your take on that is.
Um, so I work for the NBA, so I'm not gonna say this in a way to offend anybody. So I want to just say it this way so you can possibly understand. Analytics, to me, in my opinion, only matter in the process of a championship, when you have teams, and you have bench, you bring in for instance, you bring in, like, the Lakers team right now is pretty good with it because of their bench presence. They're a lot better than a lot of teams, and that can go for any team. It doesn't matter. I'm not just saying Lakers, and just to be specific, not to be specific, but if you put those people in, now let's just name some guards that are dangerous at the guard position, and let's put them in a situation where they're literally just playing against each other one-on-one 10 times in a row. So we say Damian Lillard, James Harden, Kevin Durant, Steph Curry, whoever else you want, Ja Morant, um, um, so LeBron, and all these guys, right? Kawhi, when they're going at each other 10 times in a row, one-on-one, those analytics don't matter, right? There's a different analytic. It's in here that and me as a basketball player, I'm not. That's why I say I don't want to be judgmental about that. There's an analytic that's almost like your heartbeat, and it doesn't have to even start until the actual conflict happens. So I believe, to answer that question, you had to probably talk to Durant and LeBron in the finals or something, or Curry and Kyrie in the finals, because they would probably know, because they probably had to answer those questions. Did they matter? Because they're gonna have to, like, that's why I use those specific players, Dame and all those guys. You put them in a one-on-one setting, flip of a coin, it's gonna come down to this at the end, right?
Right. Absolutely. I mean,
So that's where I use analytics, and more, if I'm a coach, because I do coach, I can build a team and put it on paper and
right,
determine what we might look like. But if the game is tied and they got, their best player versus mine, that sheet of paper is, if you look on the benches, probably is usually on the floor, and the coach is standing up like this. What's going to
right.
happen? What's going to happen, right?
Yeah,
So that's just my opinion. I don't know. It could be right, could be wrong, but I do think that that's the kind of question that a group chat with some of those players would be amazing to hear, just for the kids' sake, so they can hear, like, if you ask LeBron and KD when they played against each other in the finals, what was that last 2 minutes like? Forget who won, don't care. What was that like to come down knowing you got a certain amount of time? What was that like, Curry? You guys down by whatever, down to the OKC 3-1, knowing that Westbrook and Durant was going at you guys, and y'all came back and won that? Like, don't get into the semantics, talk about the feeling, and then I think our answer probably will surface somewhere in our individual minds.
definitely. And kind of tying into that, some people might not necessarily know this feeling, um, but if they don't play basketball or anything like that, or if they're just not necessarily into sports.
Hmm.
So my question for you is, how could you describe that feeling that you're talking about, where you know that you're hot? I'm sure there's been games where you could not miss,
Right.
and no one could guard you. So how would you describe that unstoppable feeling to someone?
For those who don't play sports, the unstoppable feeling when you're on the court, it feels like when you look on your GPS and it says you got to be somewhere in 30 minutes, but you're 45 minutes late, right? 15 minutes off. And then when you get on the freeway, you see behind you, there's a police officer making sure all the traffic stops, right? And it's just you in that road. And you don't have to speed. No one's in front of you. And you can just sit back like this because there's nothing in front of you. And you're relaxing. Now the time shrinks. So as I explained the feeling, the time shrinks down to where you make it. And then when you make it on time, that feeling of knowing that you had anxiety because you was about to be late. Now you look behind you because that's the work you put in. Behind you, that's all stopped now. I don't have to work that hard no more. I was rushing to the freeway entrance, driving fast as I could. But now I'm relaxed. I'm in control. Now I'm relaxed. That's how I feel with the basketball all day.
Right.
Just chilling. When somebody get in front of me, I maneuver how I need to. And it's more of a, and for those who don't drive, it's, for kids running around the park. If you go to a big park right now during COVID, everybody got their mask on or whoever, and they say, hey, this park is all filled up with kids. We can't play today. And then all of a sudden there's a whole nother park over there empty with more swings and rides than even on this one. But nobody can see it but you. You don't, there's no reason to make a fuss because everybody might go with you, right? You just relax because you're in control now. The anxiety of not wanting to be there, now you have to balance that control. The work is put in already. You go to there and you relax. And that's how it feels to be in control of your skill set, whether it's basketball, whether it's a podcast, whether it's the questions you guys are asking me, the thought process behind interviewing people. When you master something, there's a comfort level because you don't really know what's going to happen until it happens anyway. So you get in this, groove, so to speak. And, and once you, feel that way, I believe you can kind of cruise and control which way you want to make your decisions.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. That was amazing. And then my last question would be, so like I said before, huge fan of the AWA mixtape tour. So I just wanted to know, just get some insight on what it was like to play with guys like, the Professor and Escalade, rest in peace, and the Air Up There and guys like that.
Oh man,
that dynamic.
Wait, how much time you got?
I mean, that's up to you, man.
Shout out to all those people you named: Professor, Air Up There, Africa, Prime Objective, Baby Shaq, Silk, I'll Be Right Back, everybody that I'm missing, Homicide, Whole Lot of Game. Playing up there with all those people made me feel like I was almost being gifted something. I learned every move. One of my best friends to this day, this is a real story. We're both on a commercial for Nike called The Stickman. And before the Stickman commercial, we just went out to Venice Beach and played. I didn't know who these people were, but they were the AWA mixtape. And just so happened, me and one of their players just worked on every move I could possibly think of in the world. And we challenged each other. His name is Hot Sauce.
Yes.
And me and him doing that, we did it in the mirror, we did it. And there was another guy that joined us a little later named Trix. He was in a Nike commercial. He was the one rolling it around on his arms. Yeah. And for those who haven't seen it.
Yep.
Us three in one room, we probably made up at least, I would not exaggerate, at least 200 moves. That was a gift. I didn't know it then because I was a kid just doing things. I went on later to see Hot Sauce become one of the most popular basketball players of all time. I went to see my other friend Trix become one of the best actors of all time, in my opinion. He's done from Fast and Furious all the way down. Because he's my friend, I put him as all time. And that's just me being biased. But those things were gifts. I got to see Air Up There, catch lobs from me and do things with the basketball I could never imagine. I got to see Professor in the Garden hit the game-winning shot to get his name, and then I got to eventually call him brother. He's my, he's family now. He's my son's uncle. And to balance that out and explain it, when you get to experience people's lives and how they grow as people, and then eventually later on down in life, you guys work together and you build and you're still good at your craft, you feel like it's almost like you get to relive it twice. And that experience was maybe like going to Magic Mountain every day.
Right.
Right. You get to do something you never do again. So big shout out to those guys, because that's not something I could take back. I mean, no one could take away from me, I should say. It's something that I would never forget. And it molded me. It made me who I am. It made me exactly the player I wanted to be. Sometimes I would play on teams with so many good guards that I might get the ball twice. So you understand, when you get it twice, you got to make somebody look crazy, or you might not get it again.
Right.
That's the rules, right? And think about these, as I think about these moments, as you break them down, and you have me explaining them, it makes me realize that whatever I'm going to do later on in life is great, but that journey was always the point. So for the kids out there watching, it's not about growing up and being somebody. It's about, you were born somebody. It's about the work you're going to put in during your journey. And please believe me, you're going to need a lot of help. And there's a lot of things in life that, when I say help, we don't live in the type of situation where, people want the proper help, I should say.
Mhm.
So instead of the glamorous parts of life that people would aspire for, that journey that I went through with all those players made me realize that it was the little things that mattered. None of those major issues even affected us. Professor's always going to be who he is. All those guys are always going to be who they are. But those moments that we shared, we use those moments to keep us built. So without those moments, you can't even really work as efficiently, in my opinion, as you should.
Awesome. So that was my final question. And like I said before, I just want to thank you. Thank you for everything you've done today. Thank you for allowing me to interview you, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
No problem. Thank you for having me. Thank you, guys.
Awesome. Just to kind of wrap up here, I usually end my shows on advice. So what is one piece of advice you would give to your younger self?
The one piece of advice I would give to my younger self is to be comfortable in my own skin. I think that's something that I never really understood, because I always ignored the things that were going around me racially. I never really acted like they existed. And I grew up in LA around a lot of gang violence, and when I say comfortable in my own skin, more so not being so judgmental of everything around me, and more understanding of working on myself. So whatever image I was portraying wasn't affecting my or surroundings and environments. For the kids, to simplify that, there's no reason to point the finger at anybody but yourself. You got to fix you first before you can fix somebody else. You got to change who you are, change how you live, change what you eat, change how you rest. What do you read? What do you think about? And before you throw your opinion at somebody, and that's why I said I wish I was been able to be more comfortable in my own skin, is because, and there was at least 5 songs that molded me in the early 2000s. I would put these songs on and just start thinking that these songs mean something in my head, and not to be funny, I was told that, spiritually, that is a part of every person's life as they grow up in humanity. From the ages of 12 to, I believe, 16, you were influenced by some musical instrument or artist. So whether I thought that was real or not, I was. So if I was more comfortable in my skin, I had friends who weren't. Let's not say that we were all that way, but I wasn't as aware and studious enough to know. And that's what I wish I would have knew about then, because things would have probably been the same or different, whatever. But the truth is, I would have knew what to do with my inner feelings before my outer appearance was even seen. And then I would think it would have made me just a better person all around. So that would be my advice. You don't have to ever pursue anything other than trying to get yourself a better understanding of who you are and what's going on around you.
That's awesome advice. That's really good advice. I'm so glad we end on that too. It always ends the show on a good, I guess, inspirational kind of note. But Bone, thank you so much for sharing some of your time with us tonight and giving us some insight on your story. I know I appreciate it so much.
You were very welcome, and thank you guys for having me. And my guy, if I'm ever in your area, since you are a basketball fan, I challenge you to a one-on-one, sir.
Let's go. I'm down. I'm ready for it. So,
Love it.
Yes,
Awesome.
sir. Thank you guys for having me.
Bone, thank you so much for sharing your incredible story. I know I learned so much about streetball from watching you on social media and being able to speak with you. It was really incredible. Thank you so much. And that's a wrap on Adventures with Aggie, Bouncing Around, brought to you by Coco's Coffee House. But stay tuned for more episodes of Adventures with Aggie next week, where we feature the England Amputee Football Association.